Battling the skies.
Although Western civilization is generally considered to be the product of Greek and Roman culture, the Greeks and Romans both acknowledge ancient Egypt as the source of great ancient wisdom, a mysterious land of riddles whose secrets were considered the highest prize to some of the greatest minds in history. Egypt was known to the ancient world as a repository of high knowledge and magical practices. These universal secrets were contained and kept alive in the mystery schools. The teachings and magical ability they imparted were held in the highest secrecy and reverence. Entrance to the temples that held the secrets was tightly restricted. They were the domain of royalty, priests, and privileged initiates. Forefathers of modern thought, such as Pythagoras, Plato, and others, tell of waiting more than 20 years preparing before acceptance into the mystery schools. The secret teachings were known as esoteric or occult or symbolist teachings and were held to contain the secrets of the universe and the keys to great magic. Those who were allowed to receive the revelations of the mystery schools often went on to become history's greatest minds and a who's who of historical movers and shakers. Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, Galileo, Copernicus, Da Vinci, Kepler, Isaac Newton, Napoleon. They were rewarded for their pursuit of the ancient wisdom with not just knowledge, but a new way of thinking that allowed them to write their names in human history.
My most recent book, Some Science Adventures with Real Magic, which is in the bookstore, was taken from Arthur C. Clarke, who said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And some individuals have said that our work is just magic. Anyway, the approach that I used in paraphrasing what Clarke said was that any scientific data or personal observations that cannot be explained by the prevailing paradigm must be considered as magic until an expanded paradigm accepts their lawfulness as an important part of nature's manifest expressions. So the things Ingo talked about last night are in the category of magic relative to today's science. Whereas in the day of their birthing, which was many thousands of years ago, we were a culture that understood those things very, very well. We've slowed down since then, and now we're starting to accelerate again. Okay, you really need to understand my personal bias, and that is that we are all spirits having a physical experience as we ride the river of life together. And our spiritual parents dressed us in these bio-body suits and put us in this playpen that we call the universe in order to grow in coherence, in order to develop our gifts of intentionality, and in order to become what we are ultimately intended to become, which is co-creators with our spiritual parents. Okay, that's my bias. What I want to do in this talk is first I want to say a little bit about human psychophysiology, and then I want to talk about experiments that we have done. Actually, the first hour is pretty much all experimental work. The experiments that we have done to prove that human consciousness can significantly affect physical reality.
So hopefully you will understand that everything, all of the holidays, the Christmas, all of this that we do, whenever we even say Merry Christmas, believe it or not, we are dealing with something that is diabolically opposed to us, that is very bad for us, and we're giving something power that has nothing to do with us, something very evil. In fact, it's all about our demise. And to point out to you that this entire thing, it exists right now today. This whole idea of witchcraft and of the media, holidays, it's all connected up.
Battling the skies.
One of the greatest media personalities would be King James. I don't know how many of you have seen a picture of this particular person, but I have here a picture. How many of you have seen a picture of King James? Most of us go around with our Bibles in our hand, and we go to church. We protect them. We think they're. But this is a picture of the man who wrote the King James Version of the Bible, or at least he's given the credit for writing it. He was a supreme slave master, King James. In fact, it was King James who threw slavery into high gear. In fact, it was the slaves were brought to Jamestown. They named, in 1619, they named the place where they brought the first slaves after King James, the Bible man. Okay, so we have to start really looking at these things. Of course, King James dealt very, very highly in witchcraft. Most of us are familiar with his book, the Bible, but how many are you familiar with his other book? Is there anybody in here familiar with his other book? He also wrote a book on witchcraft, and this is a library book, so I didn't write it or anything, but you can send the pictures back up here, because I need to keep them together. Thank you. Oh, okay. Send them around this way. This is a picture, this is a copy of King James's book on witchcraft. Does that shock anybody in here?
Black people.
Doesn't shock you at all, does it? No, not real black people. It wouldn't shock, no. Or Africans, it wouldn't. But in his book, he deals with the whole art. In this particular book on witchcraft, he deals with the art of imitation. See, the media is all about imitation. The name of this particular book is King James I, Demonology. And in this book, he explains the Bible and exactly what we think the Bible is all about. That's exactly the opposite. And so our people are very much so under a spell at this particular point. We're under a spell, and that's the reason why we can almost say if we don't wake up and we don't get this information out to our people, we will go under. But of course, we're getting the information out, so we won't fear that. But so many of us will be lost along the way.
It turned out that magic users had always lived within mainstream society, but apart from it, and largely unknown to it. The towering figures of magical history weren't famous at all in the mundane world, and the obvious guesses were way off base. Leonardo, Roger Bacon, Nostradamus, John Dee, Newton. Sure, all of them were mages of various stripes, but of relatively modest ability. The fact that they were famous in mainstream circles was just a strike against them. By the standards of magical society, they'd fallen at the first hurdle.
In the skies.
We're going to learn about environmental manipulation, high technology devices today. Evolved, developed by the Central Intelligence Agency on behalf of British Secret Service, on behalf of the Royal Family of England, on behalf of the international banksters, largely Hull, based in Berlin and London, as well as New York. The global beast with all its tentacles. You think Enron was a scam. You haven't seen anything yet. This presentation is about the big global scam, mediated through those who thirst for energy and power. And we know, if you're a behavioral scientist or if you've studied the Bible, you know, both you know, that those who seek power and absolute power get absolutely corrupted, and you enter into a realm of good versus evil. And that fulfills what the Bible talks about, and is not against flesh and blood, ultimately with whom we do battle. It is spiritual forces and principalities. And you bet that in the end times, the great devil doers would not only know God's technology, want to usurp it, and undermine the most advanced technologies of God's for the manipulation, coercion, enslavement, and killing of targeted populations. And that's precisely what this whole Star Wars weaponry, the Strategic Defense Initiative, is really about. It is not about simply defending America against forces like the Soviet governments or Chinese government's nuclear threats. It is not simply about the alien menace or destroying through laser weaponry perhaps comets or planets that are making their way to strike the Earth. It is not simply about that. This is an insidious plot. It has been going on literally, as you will see in this program, for centuries, if not millennia.
And the problem with you black boy, y'all don't got too hip to understand what's going on.
The battle is in the sky. Meaning that those on an earthly plane don't yet know the struggle that is going on the highest levels.
Battle in the skies.